Welcome to Imperfect Momming. Our children are constantly looking to us for examples. The term role model doesn't quite cut it here. We are shaping their worldview with every move we make. You see, it's not in the lectures we give or moments where we are actively attempting to teach them. It's in the micro movements we make, the unconscious ways in which we navigate life. We are constantly teaching our children how to show up for themselves, their friends, their future partners, and even their future children. So what can we do to ensure we are raising thoughtful, compassionate, self-aware human beings? We have to become them ourselves. No one is perfect, but we can still all be better, and it starts with self-healing. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Imperfect Momming, and we have a very special guest today, Julie Latz. Welcome to Imperfect Momming.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, so for 45 years, I struggled with compulsive, emotional, and binge eating, and it was as though my life revolved around food. I even say sometimes like it felt like I was having an affair with food because everything was secretive, and being obsessed with food made me obsessed and preoccupied with when can I eat and where can I eat, and always trying to like run off to the ladies' room and eat whatever junk food I've packed up in my purse. So that's what makes me think it's kind of like an affair, doing something secretive because you just don't want people to know what you're really doing. So as I said, I lived that way for 45 years, always hoping I'd find the next diet to help me out and be able to lose the weight and actually keep it off. But it wasn't until 2010 where I finally cracked the code and I got to the other side of my yo-yo dieting and food obsession. And I went on to lose 90 pounds. I've kept it off for years, and I coach women worldwide on how they too can become free from food addiction. Lose the weight they want. I should say, get their eating under control so that they can lose the weight they want and keep it off.
Yeah. I find it very interesting to call it like an affair with food because of the secretiveness of it. Like that's really interesting to me. And yeah. So what was the secret? What was the code?
Yeah, how did I crack the code? Well, okay, so after, decades of living this way, I only knew how to either be on a diet or eat everything in sight. Like I didn't know how to do anything in between. So in 2010, I woke up one morning and all I can say is I was petrified to get into bed one more night, feeling hopeless and helpless and bloated and uncomfortable. And I just said to myself that one day, I have to figure this out today, which sounds crazy because between all the diets I had tried, the gym memberships, the therapies, like I tried everything as long as it wasn't unhealthy. I tried it and nothing worked long term. So for me to declare that, okay, today I'm figuring it out, it sounds a little unrealistic for it to actually happen, but I can't even tell you what came over me, but it was like I didn't have a choice anymore. I couldn't get in that bed one more night. I was too afraid of it. So I just slowed down the conversation in my head because my conversation is usually either I'm triggered emotionally by someone or something, so I'm going to eat, or I'm bored and I want to eat. Like everything was always reactive, like, oh, I feel like eating and just going to do it. So I started to talk to myself differently that day. And so I thought, well, what would it be like to be the opposite of a binge eater? And I had never thought about that before. So I just started asking myself certain questions like, well, what would a person do that doesn't just give in to impulse? And the more I had this like conscious conversation with myself, things became, I don't know, I just had it like a whole different outlook. So for example, I had never asked myself if I'm hungry because that never mattered. Like I don't even know if I knew what hunger was. I was always either eating or dieting, but going back and forth. So yeah, I knew what hunger was if I was on a diet. I shouldn't say that. But asking myself if I'm hungry, that in and of itself slowed the process down, because what I decided to do is, again, keeping in mind that I wanted to be the opposite of everything I had already been. So what I decided that day is, if I ask myself if I'm hungry, and if the answer is no, like I need to tune in and see, like, do I feel physical hunger? And the rule I made is, if I don't feel it, then I won't eat.
Mm.
And I'd never done that before. So I thought, I'll just wait till I actually am hungry and then I'll eat. So that was one thing. Another thing was, I realized, because none of the diets ever worked long term, I realized I needed to figure out how to eat any food in moderation, which I had never, ever done in my life. I didn't know how to eat anything in moderation. But what came to me is that, because diets don't work, I have to be the opposite. I have to say that there are no foods off limits. Because what I found with all the dieting was that the dieting led to deprivation,
Mm.
and the deprivation led me right back to binging. So the only way out was to decide that I can't have any foods off limits. I just have to figure out how to eat them in moderation, which sounded daunting,
Mm.
but it turned out that it really wasn't. Because the more conscious conversation I had with myself, the easier everything became. So do you want to jump in and ask any questions, or should I keep going?
No, I'm interested in your story. Go continue.
Okay. So then I'd ask myself, all right, so let's say I say, am I hungry? And let's say the answer is yes. Then I'd ask myself, well, what am I in the mood for? Again, there's nothing off limits, but I need to back up a second. I decided that I was going to follow, from a weight loss point of view, either Weight Watchers or something like MyFitnessPal, the online calorie counter. And the reason I chose those options was because there are no foods off limits there. Like, the goal is, yes, to eat healthfully, but Weight Watchers, or, a calorie counter doesn't say to you, oh, you can only have protein, or you can't have this or that. So that's why I chose those, because I realized um, if I'm going to take weight off, I have to keep track somehow of what's going into my body. So I chose Weight Watchers. So then I would ask myself, okay, what am I in the mood for? And that took a while sometimes, because, like, I didn't always know. And that wasn't a question I had ever really asked myself before, because I knew what foods I liked. So if they were nearby, I would just eat them without actually asking my body what it's in the mood for. But what I learned through this process, and really quickly, and my clients find this as well, is that when you ask your body what it wants, it knows. And it's a matter of waiting till it tells you. So do you want salty? Do you want sweet? Do you want creamy? Do you want hot? Like, what is it your body's asking for? Sometimes it relates to, like, a nutrient that you're needing, or maybe a texture or a temperature. So an example I love to give of one of my clients in this particular situation was, we were on the phone one day, and she said, I think I'm really in the mood for chili. So I said, okay. Well, the next day when I spoke with her, she said, what ended up happening was, I knew I wanted something warm and creamy, but I thought it was chili, and I gave it some thought, and I realized, no, that's not what I want. I think what I want is oatmeal. And then she thought about it a little longer, and she said, no, that's not it either. I think I want pizza. She was going through a few different foods in her mind. She's like, no, that's not it either. And then she said, oh, I know what it is. I definitely want grilled cheese. So she ended up only eating the grilled cheese. And what's so powerful about that is, she likes all those other foods, but her body wasn't, she knew she wanted warm and creamy. Like, she was getting there. She was in the right area. But what she told me is, if she didn't stop and have this conscious conversation, she would have had the chili, then the oatmeal, then the pizza, And
Mm.
then she finally would have gotten to what she really wanted, which was the grilled cheese. So she saved herself, I don't know, 1,000 calories or more. So that's like a typical sort of thing I started to do. And when I saw that I was able to talk to myself and slow things down and make decisions, it felt so empowering. So then let's say I decided, okay, I want such and such to eat. Then I would ask myself, well, how much of it can I eat and be happy when it's over?
Mm.
Never thought about that either, because I always knew if I was going to overdo food, I knew I'd be miserable afterwards, but I was so compelled to do it anyway that it didn't matter
Mm.
if I knew I was going to be miserable. But now I said, well, how much can I eat and be happy when it's over? So that brought me to like, well, how many points do I want to spend? As I said, I was doing Weight Watchers. So
Yeah.
how many points do I want on this for this snack or this meal? And being happy when it's over meant that um, I wouldn't feel bloated. I wouldn't feel uncomfortable afterwards. I would feel satisfied that it was something I really wanted. And my goal, my only goal that day when this happened was I need to be happy when I get into bed tonight. So I realized I have to be happy after everything I eat.
Mm.
And then by definition, I'll be happy when I get into bed, because that's literally all I cared about was that one day and getting into bed, feeling comfortable and like I was on the right road. So that's why I cared about being happy after everything I ate. So when I'd ask myself, how much of something can I have, be happy when it's over, I had to figure out like, well, if I want to have, let me back up 1 second. One thing I realized is if I want to incorporate any food into my life where there's nothing off limits, and I want to learn how to eat my favorite foods in moderation so I don't feel deprived and go back to binging, then I need to incorporate 2 snacks a day into my life of things I would normally binge on, because as long as I just stayed away from them, I was still on a diet. I was afraid of them. So I thought, okay, if I can, come up with 2 a day, then I can prove to myself that I can eat them in moderation.
Mhm.
And that was in the confines of asking all these kinds of questions. So let's say back then, one of my favorite snacks was frozen yogurt. So I would go to the frozen yogurt place and I would tell them. So if in my mind I was thinking, I want this snack to be 3 points.
Mhm.
With frozen yogurt, like it's kind of impossible to know what 3 points really equals. But so I would go to the frozen yogurt place and I would ask for a small. And let's say they gave me like this much, right? Like a lot of times they just fill it up really high.
Yeah.
Well, the binge eater in me would be like, great, look at all this food. Well, I can't help it. I asked for a small, right? That's the binge eater. But this person who was now emerging as a peaceful eater was like, wait a minute. I won't be happy if I eat all that. Like once it's over, yeah, I would enjoy it while I ate it. But all I cared about is being happy when it was over. So I was like, well, how much of this can I eat and be happy when it's over? And again, not knowing what 3 points would equal, I just took my spoon, I scooped a bunch of it off and threw it out. It doesn't mean I condone wasting food. It's not that, but I had to make myself the priority. So
Mhm.
I would scoop some off and be left with what I kind of estimated to be 3 points. And just seeing myself scoop it off was something I never did before. There was
Mm.
a calmness there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm going to let you talk because I haven't
Yeah.
stopped talking.
Oh, no, I love this process. And what I love about it the most is that it's you took the time to ask yourself and to get to know yourself and to focus on how you felt or how you were going to feel when you were done.
Right.
And the I took a course by my life coach, like 3, 4, 5 years ago, however long. Um, and he called it weight loss for normal people, because when you become, a weight loss guru or a fitness guru, you kind of lose touch with normal people who are
Yeah.
not all about it. Um,
Right.
And so he's not all about it, but he wanted to focus on health, and he invited a bunch of us to join with him in this course. And that was the first time that I really even dissected like emotional eating or really paid attention to what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And so fast forward, 5 years later, I'm eating dinner with my family, and I put a bunch of food on my plate, and I was very consciously eating. And I'm like, I'm full. I'm going to stop eating now. And I pushed the food away. And
Yeah.
I don't know that my parents were like, clean your plate. Like, I know that there's like, well, eat 5 more bites. I know that happened when I was a kid, but I don't remember like clean your plate. But I felt like I better clean my plate,
Yeah.
for a long time. And I was actually married to a chef who got his self-esteem from how much food I ate of his.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
So his ego was in the mix instead
Uh-huh.
of your health and well-being.
Exactly. And then on top of that, he body shamed me for gaining weight. And I'm like, I didn't want 3 servings of mashed potatoes. I mean, maybe I did because they were really good, but I was going to stop after one. And then you got butthurt because I wouldn't eat it. And I'm a people pleaser. What do you expect me to do?
Right. That's a storm just waiting to happen.
Right. And I mean, at the time I was very young. I was married to him from 22 to 25. And my friend he was also 18, 16 years older than me. And I had a friend who was also 16 years older than me, and she told me 20 years later, basically, that 15 years later, that he was very emotionally abusive.
Mm,
And um and I was like, oh, that's so interesting. I didn't see that at the time.
yeah. Well, you were young. It's hard
Yeah.
to pick that up.
Yeah, I didn't see it at the time, but like when I tell these stories now or think about these stories, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so crazy that I didn't recognize that. But like you said, I was young. It's so interesting to me how little I recognized then that I recognize it now. But it never sat well with me that he would, tease me about my weight. I'm like, you make really good food and then you force me to eat it. I didn't have that conscious thought, but like it's like then you force me to eat more than I really want to, because I'm the
Yes.
same size. Like my whole life I was the same size, and then I gained a ton of weight when I was married to him. But you know
Live and learn.
live and learn. Exactly. So um yeah, no, I what I love about your process is that it was you focused and you got guidance, because Weight Watchers was your guidance system. You needed some, training wheels or some
Right.
the thing that I'm thinking of is those bumper rails on
Yes.
when
On the
you when you
bowling alley.
bowl. Yeah. You needed the
Yes.
little bumper rails, but ultimately you're letting your body and your emotions and
Yeah.
future pacing be your guide to what feels right.
Yeah. And, in addition to just to give people some tips, if they, some takeaways, if they are struggling with food addiction, food obsession, yo-yo dieting, besides asking, what am I in the mood for and how much of it can I have and be happy when it's over? Another powerful question is, do I want this now or do I want it later? Because as a binge eater, of course you want it now. Like you think of food and you just eat it.
Mm-hmm.
But again, this is like slowing the whole thing down. This is conscious conversation. So it's basically asking, do I want it now or later? So an example of that was very, you know, it happened to me very, very often is one of the other snacks I used to like to have was a bag, like a small bag of baked Lay's potato chips.
Mm-hmm.
This was when I had first started this. And so sometimes at like 10 in the morning, I would be thinking about those chips, but I would ask myself, like, will I be happier if I eat these now or if I wait till, let's say, after lunch or I don't know, after I go to the gym or, something else? Will I be happier if I put it off? So 100% of the time, yes, I would have been happier if I waited till after lunch. Like there's nothing that would make me happy when it's over if I had my potato chips at 10 in the morning,
Mm.
other than the immediate, like this will taste good, but that's not what I was looking for. It was afterwards. So having a snack that early in the day left way too many hours in the day to only have one more snack. So that was also a conscious conversation that slowed things down, to allow me to make decisions that served me well. So what happened was, as soon as I was able to make these changes, to put something off, to have less of something, I thought to myself, like, if I can do this, why would I ever not want to do it?
Mm.
So, for example, like if I wanted to eat cookies, and if I would, let's say, look at a box and ask myself, well, how much of this can I have when it's over? It would depend. So let's say I wanted 5 points or 3, whatever it was. I looked to see how many cookies would equal that. And that's what I would eat, because I was able to show myself that I can eat it every day in small amounts and not overdo it.
Mm-hmm.
And part of what allowed me to not need to overdo it was, besides wanting to be happy when it was over, but the key here, and this is like my huge, big piece of advice to anybody dealing with this, is pay attention to every bite.
Mm.
Because when you do that, well, let me say, when you don't do that, right? We're so into multitasking. We're on our phone, we're watching TV, we're talking, whatever. We don't pay attention. And when we're eating without being awake at the plate and mindful of what we're doing, then when we're done with the food, we'll be like, okay, now what? Because we weren't there to get satisfied. We weren't part of the experience.
Mm.
So a huge piece of this is to pay attention to every bite. So let's just take M&Ms, for example. And I'm only talking about junk food here, not because I was obsessed with junk food. I mean, I was when I was a binge eater, but as I've kind of said, I needed to figure out how to eat anything I wanted in moderation. So we'll just take M&Ms for a minute. If I wanted M&Ms, I would look at the package, decide how many I wanted. Let's say the answer was, I want 10 and I will be happy when it's over. I would go into a room or, sit in the kitchen. I would take 10 out of a bag and I would eat one, and I would suck on it until it was gone.
Mm.
Then number 2, 3, 4. Do you know how long it takes to eat 10 M&Ms that way? When you're sucking on it and the creaminess and the chocolatiness of it all. I hope I'm not triggering anybody. But by the time I ate 10, I was good to go. Like I had so much pleasure and enjoyment because I was paying attention to the taste, the texture, the creaminess, the chocolatey, the little crunch that was in there, like whatever it was. So paying attention to the food is really, really so important, because then I didn't need to eat more. Whereas I used to be a person, if I'd go to a party and there were M&Ms, not only was I not paying attention to any of the people I was talking to, because I was thinking about the M&Ms,
Mm.
but I would go to the like I would eat them by the handful. Like I would eat anything by the handful, and then I would go eat something else. So that's what life was like, before I figured, this out. And so it's really being, as I mentioned before, like awake at the plate and enjoying it, eating what you want, when you want, in an amount that'll make you happy when it's over. And living this way led to me losing 90 pounds.
Mm.
And I've kept it off for years.
Yeah. I really is awake at the plate. Is that yours, or is that something that is like, is that something that a phrase that you coined, or is that?
I can't say that I've coined it, but I can't say that I have any idea where I heard it, if indeed I heard it. So I can't take credit for it, but yet I don't know if I've heard it somewhere else, or it just like came, I've been doing this for so long that
Right.
I don't really remember where it came from, if it came from somewhere.
I like that phrase quite a lot, and I like the idea of being present while you eat, especially with something, and I'm going to use air quotes, that's, bad for you. Like, because in your old pattern, you were, hiding that, and you were ashamed of eating a whole bag of M&Ms or whatnot. And you set the limit, and then you savored every minute of it. I'm guessing that 10 M&Ms would take 20 minutes to eat that way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you get all that satisfaction.
Yeah.
You don't need to eat more. And once I saw that I could eat 10 M&Ms or 2 cookies or whatever it was, it's like, why would I ever want to abuse my body with food again when I now know how to eat whatever I want in moderation?
Yeah.
So, there's a lot to it. You have to plan your life throughout the day. I tell my clients, like, this takes work every day. It's not hard work. And I've shared with you and your listeners, like, what the work is like. It's
Mhm.
asking yourself questions. There's a little bit more to it, but basically, you instead of trying to hold on to willpower, which to me, willpower conjures up like fighting against yourself. I should do this, or I shouldn't do that, or I'll try, or I'll hope. That, to me, that just doesn't work long term. So I came up with want power instead, because it's really, what do I want? When do I want it? How much do I want to have and be happy when it's over? It's all coming from a place of choice.
Yeah.
And that is, like, we are pleasure seeking species. So if we can bring on that, choice instead of have to, it's more like I get to make these choices, then we're going to want to stick with it because we feel better and we see the results. And I tell everybody, like, what I do with people is not a weight loss program, but the weight loss follows. Like, when you stay within, let's say, your points or your calories, the weight loss follows. But what I do is I help people completely transform not only their bodies, but their relationship with food. And that's why it's long lasting.
Yeah. I like want power. That's really good, because willpower is not something that lasts all day. The longer the day goes,
Yes,
the less willpower you have, or the
that's
more
right.
tired I think that you are, the less willpower you have.
Yeah. Or, you've got your willpower working, and then all of a sudden you get in a fight with your spouse, or your boss gives you a bad review or whatever. And then your first thought is like, I need to take the edge off. And then you're automatically back to, who cares? I don't even care about this diet. I just need to feel better. And there you are at the donut store.
Right. Yeah.
I remember going on, I never talk about this on podcasts, but when I was younger, my mom had I used to live in New York. My mom had put an ad. I was 30 years old, and she was concerned that I wasn't married yet. So
Mm.
she put an ad for me, a personal ad in New York Magazine. And afterwards, she said to me, I put this ad in, you're going to start to hear from people. Obviously, I'm 63, so this was way before dating apps.
Right.
And so I went on a date with somebody. I went on loads of dates, but so she wrote the ad, and in it, she said that I was slim. She made it sound like I wrote the ad, but she used the word slim, which I wasn't fat, but I wasn't slim. But I guess that's what she wanted people to think. Anyway, on the date, this guy said to me, you know what? Your ad said you're slim and you're not. I'm out of here.
Mm.
And that was just mortifying. But where did I go? To Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, yes, maybe I was trying to hold on to the willpower, but as soon as my foundation was shattered, I wanted to turn to food.
Yeah. Well, after talking, now I want donuts and M&M. I'm just kidding. Um,
Sorry.
no, you're good. I had heard some research that sugar, or cancer, can't live without sugar.
Right.
And my dad passed away from cancer. And
Mm.
so I decided that sugar killed my dad. And it's really easy or easier to give up sugar when
Yes,
put that spin on it.
absolutely.
And about a month into no sugar, my mom and I were in the car, and my brother video chatted her and said, "Come over tomorrow, Mom, and bring donuts."
Huh.
And we have like the coolest donut shop next to our house. They make just all kind, like they had a baby Yoda donut, and they had a unicorn donut.
Wow.
Super fun, decorative donuts. And so now I want to share the donut with my brother, and I want to socialize with my brother. So I was like, I'll bring the donuts and we'll go over there. And I was like, it's okay. It's not going to, one donut is not going to kill me. And after a month of really not eating sugar, it wasn't all that good either. And then my son's birthday happened like a month later. And so it's been not as easy, but my consumption of sugar has been a lot less.
That's great. You know, it's not about perfection,
Right.
because trying to be perfect with something just sets you up for failure. I mean, I personally gave up. You know, I've been at this now for, you know, quite a few years, and I no longer eat things with sugar, not because I'm afraid of them,
Mm.
but because I want to give my body the healthiest foods on the planet. So I have become whole food, plant-based. So I do, you know, really, really, really eat healthfully. But I also work with people wherever they are in their life, because like, so you've made some improvements with that, and that's great. And that's like where the support comes in, is like, where is a person right now, and what's going to move the needle for them just a little bit? Because like my transformation between the 90 pounds and changing to go from, you know, eating everything in sight to a person who eats the healthiest foods on earth, it
Mm.
was a process.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a hard one. It was like, oh, maybe now I feel like not, you know, eating this, or I'll feel better with that. And it's just tuning in. But when you've been able to make changes, you see what's possible for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and obviously you're seeing the same. It's funny, you brought up something before about the donuts didn't taste as good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what I've had happened with so many clients, and I find this fascinating, once they are told to like choose their two favorite foods for the day and work through the system with the questions and all, um, what I hear time and time again is, you know, those Cheez-Its, they must have changed the formula. Like they taste totally, they're too cheesy. I'm like, no, they didn't change anything about it. It's that you've never paid attention to it before. You know what I'm saying? Like you just
Yeah.
eat box, you know, handfuls, let's say, and
Yeah.
you're doing something else. So you think you like it. The same thing has happened with so many people when they eat ice cream. They'll say, oh my gosh, this was way too sweet. They must have done something different. Like, no, they didn't. It's that you are now in a position to actually taste things and decide whether you really like it.
Yeah.
So it's amazing.
My boyfriend told me that Penn and Teller, I don't know which one's which, but one of the bigger guy, um, he ate nothing but potatoes for 2 weeks
Yeah.
to reset his palate. And he used to, like, it like makes me choke to even think about what he used to eat for breakfast.
Uh-huh.
It's just like syrup on top of sugar on top of more sugar. Like it was so, like, I love me some sweets. That was a little extra. And now when he eats an apple, it's almost too sweet.
That is exactly where I am in life. I
Mhm.
could so relate to that.
Yeah.
The things that make my mouth water are, you know, like now I eat a salad for lunch every day that's the size of what like a family of 8 would eat. And
Mm.
it's filled with so many things that in the past, like That would seem boring, but I can't get enough of it. Like I'll make a dressing that has walnuts and balsamic and raisins and mustard and garlic and thyme, like, blend it up. So having just something that has that kind of taste makes it so delicious to eat this huge salad. And I've been eating the same, like, very similar salad for years now.
Mhm.
And it's never boring. And I use the same dressing. Like, your taste buds change. And what I've learned is that your microbiome, or like, your guts, your innards, let's just call it, they are screaming for whatever's already in there. So if you have garbage in there, that screams for more.
Yeah.
But if you have healthy foods in there, it's wanting those.
Yeah.
So what I found with the 2 snacks a day in small portions, that was not too much to get your system revved up to crave more,
Yeah.
especially in the confines of wanting to be happy when it's over, and like all these questions and that sort of thing. It was just enough to put yourself in what I call the magic zone, which is this very calm place where you're not feeling deprived and you're not feeling this need to binge. You're just in a place where you're satisfied, you're eating what you want, and you feel comfortable when it's over.
Yeah.
So the magic zone to me is like the goal.
Yeah.
So eating a little bit, eating 2 cookies or eating a small bag of baked Lay's or eating some frozen yogurt, that isn't going to do it. But sitting down with a box of something is going to make you just want more. It's physiologically how we are. And the food manufacturers are banking on that. And they do all kinds of research to make sure they get us but good. So they come up with the perfect combination of salt, sugar, and fat so that we crave it.
Right. I remember saying to someone that whatever you feed your body craves.
That's
And
it.
she was like, "Are you sure?" And I was like, "Well, think about like the more sugar you eat, the more you crave sugar." And she goes, "Yeah, but that's sugar." And I'm like, "Well, it's not just specific to sugar." Like, but I didn't have the research to back it up. So
Yeah.
now I'm going to send this episode. Is there a piece of advice that you want to share with moms?
Well, oh gosh. Besides, I mean, everything I said really was advice of how to get eating under control. But as a mom, my sons now are 29, 26, and 23. But if, when my kids were younger, what I wish that I was able to do was to share with them what I was really going through, because I couldn't. I was too embarrassed. Wherever we were, I would have, as I said earlier, like pack up junk food. And let's say we were at an airport, I would say to my family, like, you know what, I just have to go to the ladies' room. And I would run to the ladies' room, eat whatever I could that I'd packed up, or I'd stop at a concession stand, wherever we were. But if I were able to trust back then that I can share this with them, it would have made my life so much easier. When I had to wait to tell my family about this until I feel like figured out that, okay, I got that, I know what to do now. And when I did, and I shared it with them, they were loving and they were supportive. So if you're struggling and, you know, looking back, I would suggest see if you can have an open, honest conversation with your family and say, this is what I am working on, and this is what I'm struggling with. And I'd love for you, to be there to support me, because I don't want to hide and sneak around. I want to get better from this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. It's so much better when you have support.
Yeah.
And as moms, I talk about this all the time, but as moms, like, they're watching what we do and they're not so much listening to the lecture. And the other thing that I heard a parenting expert say is that kids are excellent observers and poor interpreters.
Mm,
And
I
so,
like that.
yeah. And that made so much sense looking at my own life and knowing now what I didn't know then, and making the connections that I did when I was little. that influenced my entire life, that had, my dad or my parents, talk to me about
Yeah.
what they were going through, or what created the reaction that I got, or and so on, I would have had a different experience. And
Absolutely.
so I'm all about the open communication between parent and child in an age appropriate way, but absolutely.
Yeah. And
sharing.
with this, it's a little challenging because it is shameful, it is embarrassing. You don't know how your loved ones are going to react.
Mhm.
When I finally told my mom, I think I was about 44, and I finally told her that I have this problem, this binge eating disorder. My hope was that she was going to say, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know. I wish you told me, like I'm here for you," and hug me and all that. But that's not at all what happened. What happened was her response, and I know she only meant well, whatever. She did the best she could, but her response was like, "How do you know that? Who told you have such a thing? That sounds ridiculous." And all I wanted to do was like hide under a rock, and I just wished I hadn't said anything. So it is a slippery slope.
Yeah. Yeah. And it absolutely, like, you can trust your intuition about, if it's a safe space or not. And if
Right.
it's not safe, then keep it to yourself until you
Yeah.
feel safe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a book that's been instrumental in your personal development journey?
There's a book that I love called The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. You read it?
Uh-huh.
I love that book so much because it actually is in alignment with how I run my life with food and, what I teach to my clients, because the essence of it is like everything you do will take you in one direction or another, every single little thing you do. So if there is like let's say my hand should be going the same way. If whatever you do is taking you either this way or this way,
Yeah.
and you may not see it or feel it at the time. So the one cigarette, the one cheeseburger, the one this, the one that, whatever you're doing is taking you in a direction. And so what I call tricks to make it stick, which fill in like those questions I was talking about, how much do I want? When do I want? I call those tricks to make it stick. Those are really the little things that are along the lines of what Jeff Olson is referring to, like things that are easy to do, but they're also easy not to do, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to say, okay, I want a cheeseburger, but I won't be happy if I eat the whole thing. So how much of this cheeseburger can I eat and be happy when it's over?
Yeah.
So you're making decisions based on the trajectory in which direction you want your life to go. So I had read that many, many years ago, but it never came into my mind when I created this program for myself. But looking back, I realized like, wow, he was very much along the same lines, just the little things you can do each day that move the needle.
Yeah. That's awesome. Where can our listeners find you?
My website is peacefuleater.com. And on there, I have a free gift, which is an ebook called The 10 Tips to Stop Overeating. So they can get that. I'm also on Facebook under Peaceful Eater and LinkedIn. My name's Julie Latz. And so I'm on LinkedIn there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your beautiful journey. And I hope that those listening who are struggling with this are also will reach out to you and get some support and begin their journey.
Well, thank you so much. It's been so much fun talking with you.
Absolutely. And there will be another episode for you all coming next week. And until then, keep healing. Bye, guys. Thank you for tuning in to Imperfect Momming. It's time for us to step up and realize that our power is not in trying to shape our children. Our power lies in shaping ourselves into the people we want our children to model themselves after. Don't just do it for your kids. Do it for yourself. When you become a more self-aware, compassionate, and confident person, you and everyone around you benefit. For more information about me and my work, visit AliciaLyons.com. That's ALYSIALYONS.com. See you next time.